all in readiness for a fantastic day's motor racing. A big crowd already on hand at the venue and relatively clear weather conditions. Joining me in the commentary box, as he so often does, is Eastern Creek Motorsport manager Kevin Prendergast. Good to see you looking so well, Kevin.
Yes, Dave, it's good to be back. It's been a little bit of a layoff from major drag racing events here at Eastern Creek Raceway, but it's good to be back with the Australian Top Alcohol Championships, and the top alcohol category certainly the most hotly contested racing category in Australian drag racing today.
I can certainly agree with that. The first pairing on screen, obviously qualifying here, Harold Campbell, that's him in the Ford T-Bucket configuration this weekend. Slightly different for him, Kevin, as opposed to the traditional funny car running under the Insanity banner.
Yes, Harold has two bodies for this car. Essentially the difference between an altered and a funny car is the body configuration. The altered is the traditional drag racing vehicle, based very loosely, and I say very loosely, on the Ford T-Bucket body, and Harold has that configuration to run in top alcohol today. Harold, of course, hails from North Queensland, down from Townsville, so he's a long way from home, but he certainly has made a mark in Australian drag racing because of his performances.
On this occasion, he'll be conducting a qualifying run against New South Wales' Stan Tyndall. Green light now, and away they rocket in the first pass of the day here at Eastern Creek. And certainly Stan Tyndall got to the other end quickest. That's him on the right-hand side of your screen, and that time reflects that. Stan Tyndall, a 6.289 second pass, as opposed to Harold Campbell, 6.959. Nothing really surprising there, Kevin?
No, I think you'd find that Stan would be reasonably pleased with that 6.28. It's still relatively early in the day for this first qualifying session, and Stan would be quite happy to get a 6.20 down. I think you'll find that the times will be relatively easy in the morning session, and then it'll really start to tighten up as a bit of heat gets into the track and the day progresses on.
Fair comment. This pairing, Gary Phillips on camera there, is the reigning national top alcohol champion, magnificently turned out dragster, and that man all the way from Western Australia, the Castrol funny car, and what a beautifully presented race car it is too, is of course Alan Dobson, who at the moment, Kevin, is credited with having the fastest pass in top alcohol history.
Yes, of course, the big target for all top alcohol races in Australia is the first top alcohol car to run in the 5 second zone. Currently, Gary Phillips, you see on screen, has run a best of 6.05, but Alan Dobson in the Castrol funny car has run a 6.01, which is literally 1/100th of a second away from that 5 second time, and they've also run 235 mile an hour. So the car is not only the quickest in Australia, it is also the fastest. The problem they have here at Eastern Creek, they've raced here twice before, but they really have had trouble adapting to the track conditions of Eastern Creek. Today, I think they've been playing with the clutch, and they're determined to beat the racetrack today.
So the Queenslander against the Western Australian, the Castrol entry, an Oldsmobile Achiever. Could well be that we might see these two doing battle later in the day once we get round to finals time. Green light will go on any tick of the clock. Away they go. Brilliant reaction time by both drivers. Dobson very skatey there across the racetrack, kept it all together and got to the other end first. Parachutes unleashed. Phillips a 6.169. Dobson marginally better, 6.157. Great run. He looked out of control for a while.
Well, he certainly moved around on the track, but the funny cars do tend to do that. But 6.15, that's a good time. I'd say anyone that can run a consistent 6.1 time today is going to be very much in the hunt. Currently, that puts Alan Dobson in number 1 qualifying position, with Gary Phillips slipping into number 2.
When we talk about well-presented race cars, you're going to see another two of the country's very best on show here. Steve Harker, who currently leads the point score, only by 200 points in the Australian Top Alcohol Championship coming into this meeting. That's him in the funny car, but the man now on screen in the Top Gun Ignition leads entry is of course John Noonan. And boy oh boy, if you can find a better presented dragster anywhere in Australian drag racing than that one, I'd like to see it.
Yes, John Noonan, one of the initiators of top alcohol racing in Australia, has got a good team behind him. Interesting in that he has the current number 2 point scorer, Stephen Reid from Queensland, on his crew today. Steve Reid, who really has sort of charged fairly well in this year's racing, unfortunately crashed the car again at Adelaide some 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Steve is down watching and also assisting John Noonan to get that race car down the racetrack.
This car of Harker's is almost brand new. I think I can call it that. Debuted in January. The car is about 200 pounds lighter than the previous model, and that's being reflected in the car's performance. As I said a while ago, currently leads the points series lead, And if that all makes sense, you know exactly what I mean.
Yes, of course, the weight is very important for these cars. The dragsters, altereds and funny cars all run a different weight brake. So in other words, the size of the engine determines how heavy the car is. And in drag racing, 100 pounds at this level equals about a tenth of a second. So to take 200 pounds out of the car improves the performance automatically by about 2/10 of a second. Vitally important at this level of racing.
Steve Harker's Dodge Daytona set to do battle here against the Top Gun dragster entry of John Noonan. Once again, a fairly good lead by both guys. It looks as though Harker may be spinning the tyres mid-track. Noonan, blistering result, rockets through towards the top end, and we can see there Noonan a 6.328 versus a 6.351 by Harker.
Yes, interesting there. Harker obviously had a problem. He ran a 6.35, but he certainly was going very, very slowly through the traps. I'd suspect he may have a problem there. John Noonan at a 6.32, I think that's his best ever, and I think they'll be very, very pleased with that. At this point, that puts him firmly in the field at about number 4 qualifying position.
Jeff Burnett, the Queenslander in the world's fastest altered race car, has demonstrated plenty of courage this season. Kevin was involved in a terrible crash at Willowbank Raceway earlier in the year. He's back bigger, better and faster than ever, and a great burnout too.
Yes, Jeff Burnett, always a crowd favourite. The Altereds are known worldwide for their spectacular handling, their wild-looking pieces of equipment. I guess you compare them with a sprint car in speedway racing. Open wheeler, you can see the driver. But Jeff Burnett really has developed this car over a couple of years. He now has a PSI blower on it. He's on a solo here, and he'll be looking to take his time and lay down a good number.
Reaction time, very good indeed. Flying down the quarter mile here at Eastern Creek Raceway. Jeff Burnett, don't be surprised at all if he advances all the way through to the final this afternoon. A 6.504, nothing shabby about that.
Yes, Jeff Burnett, they're late getting the chutes out and he's just run off under the grass. In front of you there you can see the new gravel trap that's been installed at Eastern Creek Raceway. But Jeff, no danger at all there. He was a little late on the parachute and takes a drive onto the grass. As
we continue now with qualifying for the top alcohol cars, obviously contesting the 5th round here today of the National Series at Eastern Creek. A great pairing here. The current European champion Steve Reid, all the way from the UK and England, and great to have him back in Australia. That's him on screen in the top alcohol dragster. His opponent will be Dale Pedersen, the Victorian, who turns out one of the nicest prepared funny cars in the business.
Yes, so just starting, you can see the alcohol engine. The engines are actually started on petrol by squeezing fuel into the injector, and then the alcohol is pumped up through the fuel system. Steve, you can see there patriotically showing the English flag. He's up against Dale Pedersen, and this is a beautiful funny car. Was painted a plain pearl white early in the season. He now has the sponsorship of West Gas, which is actually based here in Sydney. Dale Pedersen coming from Victoria, but he's been able to pick up the West Gas sponsorship. The car's been repainted, and it certainly is a credit to him and a good example of just how good the quality of Australian drag racing is.
Of the two competitors now on the racetrack for qualifying, Steve Reid, the Englishman, certainly has the jump, if you like, in the point score, Kev.
Yes, he certainly has. Steve's competed all summer here in Australia.
Great burnout from Pedersen.
Oh,
the crowd go up here.
Steve Reid has competed all through the summer here in Australia, but he's been troubled in adapting to the Australian track conditions. For some reason, he suffered through a tyre shake problem, which in fact has done a lot of damage both to the engine, the car and the transmission components of it. So he's really got to get a handle on this racetrack. He recently flew back to England and through to America to pick up some spares, and I know he's very determined to win this race.
Steve Reid has travelled and raced in about 7 continents in 1992-93, and almost world famous, Kev, for his reaction time. Just sensational out of the lights.
Yes, that's one of the benefits. He certainly has had mechanical troubles, and to some degree he's been behind in performance, but his great reactions have been able to rescue him when it's come to the finals and to actually getting the jump off the start line.
Beautiful car, the West Gas entry of Victoria's Dale Pedersen. Another classic confrontation here, dragster versus funny car.
Pedersen's car is a Chev Beretta, again based loosely on a Beretta Coupe from the US, a carbon fibre body, and under that body 500 cubic inches of Keith Black racing engine.
Yes, magnificent piece of technology. Steve Reed seems as though he had no major tyre shake dramas that time round. He blisters his way up the quarter mile with a 6.259. Pedersen's time a little faster than it looked, a 6.44.
Greg Gower, you seem to have a real handle on this racetrack today.
Yeah, we seem to be getting down it fairly good today. Noddy, we're looking for a win here today.
So far a best of 6:01 and a 235 mile per hour pass. Eastern Creek's notorious for not liking funny cars, but you seem to be fairly comfortable.
Yeah, well, we're getting down in the 16s today, and we'd like to step up a little from there. Hopefully we can run a 6.0 or something like that on the track.
There he is, a very relaxed Greg Gower talking with Kevin Prendergast earlier today. The proud owner of that magnificent car, the Oldsmobile Achiever funny car sponsored by Castrol. Of course, the driver is Alan Dobson, currently the country's fastest top alcohol car. And Greg Gower indicating there to Kevin Prendergast that he's looking for a 6.0 run today. That may not happen, but that car will certainly give it one heck of a shake, I can assure you of that. His opponent on this occasion in round one will be John Noonan in the Top Gun Dragster. And Kevin Prendergast, this racetrack in the past has traditionally tended to favour the dragster somewhat because of the nature of the surface. Obviously the longer wheelbase does tend to be a little beneficial.
Yes, that's correct, David, although the last race was actually won by Steve Harker in the funny cars, and talking to the funny car competitors today, they're all very, very confident they've got what it takes to get down this racetrack. But currently on the track, Alan Dobson, top qualified with a 6.15, and John Noonan in number 5 spot with a 6.32. John Noonan has been struggling with performance recently, but the 6.30 extremely pleasing for him. He's going to have trouble getting around Dobson, but the thing about it is the funny cars do move around, and unless Dobson can ensure that he gets it all set properly and gets down that racetrack, then Noonan's got a chance.
One of the problems with telephones in commentary boxes is that they might ring from time to time. Thank you very much, Kylie, for getting that. Alan Dobson now has completed his burnout. You can see the hatch being closed on the top of the car's roof by Greg Gower, car owner, trying to signal something to Alan Dobson there. So we now have that confrontation that I've referred to a couple of times today thus far. Funny car versus dragster. Number 1 qualifier Dobson, closest to your camera, and number 5 qualifier in the Top Gun entry is of course John Noonan. Heads up start situation, i.e. no handicap, and they'll leave simultaneously. Well, that's the plan anyway. They do that. A fine side-by-side leave. I'll tell you what, they're running very, very quickly. Alan Dobson stealing the march right when it counted at the top of the racetrack. Sensational pass.
Yes, a good time there, a 6.19, so they've backed up their early performances. 6.19 at 227 mile an hour. That's the top speed so far in this event. John Noonan, not disgraced, a 6.5, slightly off the pace. He was actually doing quite well until about three-quarter track, but then the funny car literally powered away and went on to take the win.
Now we see Steve Reed, all the way from the UK, set to do battle in the first round against Dale Pedersen.
Just to see the starter motor there. All of these cars are started by a remote starter motor. As you can see, it cranks the engine over off the top pulley of the supercharger. The starter motor is then removed and the car goes out to race. Dale Pedersen qualified in the Beretta in a number 7 position up against Stephen Reed, who qualified in number 3 with a 6.25.
Okay, burnout phase now for both cars. A big smoky burnout by Dale Pedersen. Have a look at that one.
Yes, a great burnout. The burnout, of course, undertaken in order to clean the tyres and set them up for racing. But looking at Stephen Reed's tyres there, he didn't do a proper burnout, and you can see the marks on the tyres are not completely clean all the way around. That can affect the traction of the car, and it can affect the way the car goes down the racetrack. The name of the burnout is not only, of course, to be spectacular, and the crowd loves it. The name of the burnout is to clean the tyres, to heat them up, and that's when the smoke comes off. That's when it's good. Steve Reed's not that way at all. Very patchy burnout, and that can affect his performance.
Expert comments from Mr. Drag Racing, Kevin Prendergast. The Wes Gas sponsored funny car, carbon fibre, as Kevin Prendergast alluded to a short time ago.
Just an interesting point there. The competitiveness of top alcohol racing in Australia, there's been 4 winners at the last 4 races. Dale Pedersen won in Adelaide, Steve Harker won in Melbourne. I mean, it's just gone on and all years. So any of these guys in this race can win today.
Set for a start now. This should be a tremendous dash down the quarter mile. Both drivers edge forward. Green light's on now, and they get away side by side. It's the Pommy, though, Steve Reed, who emerges victorious. He goes through with a 6.274 at 220 miles per hour. Pedersen with this was a 6.4, and he might have a problem. No parachute.
Yes, he's obviously got a problem going right through the gravel trap and up over the hill. Well, that's very bad. That travel trap's just been put into racetrack in order to stop the cars, but he would have been doing over 220 mile an hour when he's gone through here, and it looks like from the camera position he in fact has gone a long way down through into the car park area of the racetrack.
I'd suggest about 500 metres into an adjoining paddock, and it would seem the car has slammed into a tree or something, Kevin. There look as though they're lifting the carbon fibre body off the car.
Yes, as we approach the car, they've obviously pulled the body off the car. Pedersen obviously was unable to shut the car down, and it's driven right through the gravel trap. Obviously, as you can see, all the safety people on the scene here. We have a fairly extensive crash and fire crew there. We see the Andrew people, and as you thought, the car has run into, looks like a log, and that's ultimately what stopped the vehicle.
Oh, bad luck indeed. Let's sincerely hope that Dale Pedersen emerges unscathed. The crash crew, safety crew here at Eastern Creek, as good, if not better, than most racetracks around the country, no matter what form of motor racing. We did see a similar incident here back in November last year with Wayne Missingham.
Just looking this on replay now, both cars moving around on the track as they tend to do. As they come through the lights, no parachute whatsoever. And in fact, Dale continued virtually at the same speed. You can see the car starting to bounce on the tyres, and what's happened, it's literally driven over the top, and I suspect that the body has pushed the throttle because it actually accelerated as it went up over the top end. Dale, you can see they've got oxygen on, they're just putting away. I don't think there's anything dramatically wrong with him, but obviously he'll be extremely sore, and I'd suspect they'll be taking him off to hospital to have him checked out now.
Yes, observation. Bad luck for Dale Pedersen. Jeff Burnett now versus Stan Tyndall.
Well, this will be a great matchup. Stan Tyndall and the dragster, very competitive, but the man who's created a lot of upsets, Jeff Burnett, in the double A altered, the only altered left in the field. The other car, of course, was from Queensland, and unfortunately the Insanity car hasn't qualified for the field. So Jeff Burnett qualified at number 8 position, which is fairly unusual for him. He qualified with a 6.50, so he's actually in the worst position in the field. He's up against number 4 qualifier, and of course that's Stan Tyndall in the dragster.
Yes, that may be true as far as the qualifying stats are concerned, but Burnett's been around a long time, and 9 times out of 10 he gets it right when it matters. And of course, under heads-up start conditions, I'm sure that Burnett will have this altered, which is regarded by the experts as being the world's fastest, well and truly dialed in. Tyndall in the far lane, in the snap-on tools lane, closest to your camera, is of course the Queenslander Jeff Burnett. It's State of Origin here at Eastern Creek Raceway, and it's the Queenslander, thank you very much. Jeff Burnett takes the win and absolutely flies away. The parachute's unleashed. Devastating, in fact. A 6.512 at 214 miles an hour. Unfortunately, Tyndall, Kevin, could not keep up.
Now, here we have the debut of a brand new top fuel drag racing vehicle in Australia, and the return of one of Australia's great race drivers in Graham Cowan.
Top fuel drag racing approaching perhaps a new era in Australia. We've still got Jim Reed. We now have Rochelle Splatt, who recently won the 1993 Nationals. And of course, this man coming back augurs well for a strong future, Kev.
Yes, this is a brand new combination from the USA. Graham's put a big investment into it. His Rocket Industries firm is one of the leading performance wholesale businesses in Australia. He's obviously got a lot of sponsorship support for it, as you can see by a number of products. And Graham really is set to make his mark in Australian drag racing.
And did you see the race car transporter in the pits by any chance?
Yes, a beautiful piece. A big burnout there from Graham Cowan, a huge burnout. This car obviously has got the best of everything. It's virtually the state of art in the USA.
Kev, I noticed with that burnout then, it wasn't a pedal to the metal style burnout. He was on it, off it, you know.
Well, you've got to remember that this is one of the first drives that Graham's had in this car. They are difficult to adapt to and very touchy on the throttle. It's not unusual for the driver to go on and off the throttle a touch in the burnout. If that's taken too much, they can cause engine damage. but obviously Graham, a very experienced driver, and he knows what he's up against here. That's Gary Phillips there. They seem to have an idle problem with the car. Gary just adjusting the idle there, telling Graham to hold it. They're just trying to back it down. It seems to be idling a little hard as it goes into stage.
Yeah, Graham Cowan seems to be keen to go on with the job. He indicated to Gary, no, that's fine, just let me get this thing done. And the great man of Australian drag racing in his debut, the return, an exhibition run in this mighty Top Fuel dragster, is about to unleash somewhere around 4,000 horsepower at Eastern Creek Raceway. The 10,000 strong crowd stand as one. You can see that in the background. Top Fuel drag racing, that's what life's all about as far as they're concerned. Let's go, Graham. Oh, problem there, Kevin. Big problems. Oh, the clutch has exploded. There's fireworks all over the racetrack. It looks like Darling Harbour on New Year's Eve at Eastern Creek on Anzac Day.
Well, it certainly is a spectacular debut. The car started dropping material on the racetrack. Just taking a look at the replay here. Yes, it started to get up onto it, and I would suggest, as you've said, the clutch has come apart. That is the most spectacular clutch explosion I think I've ever seen. An amazing debut as we look at it again.
Just incredible. The head on camera explosion personified, sending hot debris all the way into the race crowd. Look at that freeze frame shot. It shows just how high it went and also how wide. It's absolutely scattered the entire width of the racetrack, which at Eastern Creek is how many metres wide?
Yes, that's a big clutch explosion. Generally, these cars have a titanium, as we look up close there's a titanium clutch on the can on the clutch mechanism, and I would say that the clutch is actually gone through that, which is very unusual. All of this material is SFI specified, but for some reason the can hasn't been able to retain it, and the majority of that material coming out is the titanium sparks.
Jim Reed there, lending a hand. Of course, Jim fairly experienced with all the dramas, the highs and the lows of drag racing. And Jim Reed offering some advice there. I think I can hear him saying something about being careful when you tow it because it might let go